Everyone into today's snowed in version of the Pipeline Report. I'm here, Zach Carskadden in Shreveport, Louisiana, at my home studio that I've d- designated Studio 121. Um, because the roads are extremely icy, and we'll dive into that today a little bit about the effects of this snowy storm and what it means for the South a little bit, and then catch up on the news of what's happened over the weekend with Minneapolis to the Middle East and China and Canada. And also finally here back at home with what's expected this week with negotiations heading in to the end of January with the budget negotiations. So don't miss out. Be sure to share, like, and subscribe today's episode as we dive into the news and catch up over the weekend so that we're aware of what's going on and know how to pray in this week and this season ahead. So join with us as we start today's episode of the Pipeline Report. All right. Thank you, each and every one of you, for following along today as we dive into today's news and events that we have going on here. And today will be a heavy hitter as we want to discuss many of the events that happened over the weekend. And oh boy, was it a doozy as some things popped off in Minneapolis, literally, and some sad events that happened, unfortunately, with the loss of life. But now, certain Democratic Party officials are using this to try to negotiate for a defunding and of DHS heading into the budget deal, which we knew this was coming. We saw this months in advance as we got into the budget negotiations towards the end of the year that threatened a government shutdown. And here we are headed again. That was warned because that was just a stopgate bill to get to this point at the end of January. But first off, we want to highlight the effects of the snowstorm this weekend and why I'm here sitting in my home studio here in Shreveport, Louisiana, as Pastor Tim makes his travels back from Germany. And as you can see here, upwards of 800,000 have been have lost power over the weekend. I know some people here in Shreveport are expected not to get it back till 10 p.m. tonight. Some have got it back. This icy storm is very dangerous as you see the effects here. I know for those who are not in this region, this isn't something to necessarily be worried about. But for the South, this is huge because one, we don't have the equipment locally, domestically, to municipality wise to deal with this. And so we were able to basically just, we were forced to be stuck inside. I know some people are asking, did our pipes freeze? Mine haven't. I winterize my house and I make sure that that is not an option. But I don't know if some other people did. The possibility of pipes freezing have, but with this ice, trees are frozen, branches and limbs have become heavy, trees are falling down, cutting down power lines, et cetera, things like that. For whatever reason, some people are driving around and getting their cars stuck, and it's just people aren't necessarily paying attention, but they have crews out there helping out. I know SWEPCO here in the region is doing a fantastic job of sending out their linemen when it's safe to do so. And it really hit Saturday night. You know, Saturday was kind of light, not too heavy, but then Saturday night it just rained real heavy. And that's when the ice really started to stick. And then yesterday it was freezing, and tonight it was freezing. So I mean, it's my little yard is an ice pack. It's quite hilarious. My boys are enjoying it. There's a hill in our backyard that we're able to enjoy and do some sledding that we don't normally get to do here in the South. So some pluses and minuses, but we are snowed in, which is why I'm here in my home studio. And today we want to go through that update, continue to pray for those who have lost power. I know in Louisiana and Mississippi, respectively, they each lost upward of 100,000 households have lost power. I think Tennessee was like 225,000 as of earlier this morning. Yes, it's very cold. I saw one report that talked about how the South is expected to be colder than the Northeast today. That usually rarely never happens. Also, saw one joke that said, in this negotiation with Greenland, Greenland had the first attack and they decided to send their weather down. So I digress from that point, and on to the next. Now, last week we saw President Trump. I want to pull this up here. Start negotiations with Benjamin Netanyahu and sending his envoy and Witkoff and Jared Kushner in going into the phase two of the Israel-Gaza peace deal. This is not going according to plan as far as how Trump had laid this out. Because if you remember in phase one, he discussed how Hamas needed to demilitarize, how to hand over all living and dead hostages. That has still not been done as of the writing of this report. I know there's some news reports out there that they may have recovered the missing body. That's still somewhat up in the air, seem very speculative. But actually, one of a good thing that has come out of this negotiation is Kushner is saying is like, look, there are pockets within Gaza that could possibly be reconstructed. And those that will be reconstructed are those that will be demilitarized. And the term that came out over the weekend from President Trump and his allies was this peace board that will be put together. Now, Israel has pushed for and advocated for that anybody a part of this quote unquote peace board or a part of the new Gaza moving forward have no ties to the Palestinian Authority and or Hamas. Unfortunately, those that have been put up and nominated are just lackeys for Hamas and for the Palestinian Authority. And the reason that's problematic, just reminding you as to why you guys understand that, is that the Palestinian Authority is hand in hand walking with um, Hamas. I know somebody put in here they did hand over the body. I saw some report on that. I'm still waiting for confirmation. I hope that's true. But as far as I said, this report here that we're reading, it was not. So that news is still, from what I'm finding, coming out, um, and just trying to catch up on everything. I might have missed something, but um, the bigger issue here is not necessarily the body. It's the demilitarization of the pockets within Gaza. That's still going on because you still have Hamas attacking, trying to cross borders, and really antagonizing the IDF in the pushback. As part of this negotiation, they're asking for Kushner and Witkoff are asking for Israel to open up the Egyptian border. Israel will not do that. That is ultimately how Hamas has been able to strengthen themselves over the years. And even this time of pullback from the IDF, Hamas has somehow been able to strengthen their numbers and strengthen their resources in this time. So there's a lot to deal with here, a lot to pray with and understand this. And the reason I bring this up is because you may or may not have heard that Trump is um, sending warships into the Middle East, in the Middle East region, uh, for a possible preemptive attack and on Iran that he has warned about for weeks now, telling the Iranian Ayatollah, telling the IRGC, look, if you continue to, and more so, if you do harm protesters who are out there fighting for their freedom and or just voicing their opinion, that there will be an imminent attack. That's the red line he's put out there. All reports, even um, the most gracious humanitarian reports of 500, possibly 2 to 3,000 people. There are some reports that I've seen 10,000, maybe 20,000 a day. I don't know. It's hard to speculate which is actually true, but if anything, as far as Trump's kind of red line that he's put out there, is saying that, look, if any loss of life, then we're going to attack because we want to stand for the people of Iran and for their freedoms. And so President Trump has put himself in this position to say these things, and this is where we want to pray for, obviously, the Gaza peace deal, and that the right move be made forward for not only Israel but the United States as well. They don't want to get involved in future entanglements there with this peace spore that is being pushed forward. And this is kind of a watered down deal that Trump had initially put out there for, of like, look, let's go ahead and clean the slate in Gaza, but now in Iran, you're seeing things be heated up there. And remember, we didn't really talk about it much. But before the Venezuela attack on taking out Maduro, these similar moves were made of putting ships in the region to kind of hold the people at bay and hold the leadership there in Venezuela accountable. And then Maduro said what he said, and Trump did what he did, and allowing the U.S. military to, you know, go in and capture him and bring him back. Now, what will happen in Iran? We don't know. But we want to pray for wisdom there for this administration, for the leaders, um, for Marco Rubio, all those advising, even Kushner and Witkoff here, because they're the ones that Trump is listening to, and what to do, and General Raising Cane and et cetera, those who fall within the military, of advising Trump. Obviously, Trump has his own mind, his own opinion, but we want to make sure that if we can do anything, pray into that and pray into this situation, that the Trump administration makes the proper call there, adhering to what the Lord would want. And more so, this is the focus: is President Trump respects the authority of each nation to make decisions that are in best for themselves and their people. And I think that's something that's different, where you've seen these big coalitions get together, talking about for quite a few years, of, going back to even the League of Nations, and now you have NATO, the EU, these alliances that are being made. So Trump's kind of the bunker buster to all that, just and then the idea of thought there. So we're seeing that all play out, and then piggybacking onto that thought of this idea of a combined strategy here. Of last week, we saw Trump go to Davos and make some interesting speeches. And the reason I want to bring that up is because we talked about the possibility of a 25% tariff on NATO and EU countries, as far as if they don't, adhere to giving up Greenland. What we did see was Trump kind of caved on that, but he caved on that because in negotiations about Greenland with Denmark and other NATO countries in the EU, it was agreed upon that Trump and the administration in the U.S. for the foreseeable future will be able to have an increased presence of military on the island. Now, how far is he willing to go on that? There's a lot of speculation of whether U.S. really needs Greenland, whether Greenland really wants to be there. It's the point isn't necessarily to get into that, and I don't necessarily know if that's Trump's agenda or not, but he wants to push forward, and this is the art of the deal. You throw out there, and you're willing to, in negotiation. This is smart strategy. This is smart business practices, of making sure that if you throw something out there, that seeing if the other side is willing to cave, or figuring out what the actual pain point is that they really want. And I think Trump knows that the people of Greenland and Denmark necessarily maybe don't want to join the U.S. as far as the Greenlandish people, but Denmark itself doesn't necessarily want to give it up uh, at the price that he's asking. And so he's just throwing it out there and saying, "Hey, I'm going to take it. Let's do something." And so they kind of caved, and they gave it to him. And I know a lot of people on the right are bashing him for it, but in reality, look, it is a blessing for him to be able to get what he got. And this is something that, even going back to Harry Truman, Theodore Roosevelt, many presidents in history's past have tried to get a deal done on Greenland because they understood the military and security significance of it. And so Trump's able to get something done. Now, what the deals are still coming out. So that'll be interesting to see. But he avoided a trade war there that could have harmed the American people in that on the Greenland deal with the negotiations heading into Davos last week. So a major victory there for President Trump, it looks like. And one thing we're seeing come out of that is the increased relationship between Canada and China. You saw Scott Bessent attack um, the Canadian Prime Minister Carney, Trump attacking him, saying some unsightly words. They're neither here nor there. But the point is, Trump is highlighting the increased relationship between Canada and China and calling it out and saying, look, if you're going to have a trade deal with China, you cannot use Canada as a port to just allow them to bring things in and get around tariffs. Same thing would have has been done in Mexico, where okay, stuff's really made in China, they just ship it to Mexico, assemble it there, trying to do the same thing in Canada. Trump's kind of calling it out there. His strategy on that of attacking Canada Prime Minister and politicians and Canada itself personally is really what is causing Canada to go to the open arms of China. And so I think this is one of those things, one of those positions where Trump needs to kind of recalculate here with our neighbor to the north and figuring out how to best deal with that rather than distancing himself by attacking them. This is part of bad Trump here and highlighting and dealing with this issue on how he just is who he is, unfortunately, in some instances. And this is a negative of that. Now, back on the home front here domestically, I want to go to um, talking about this. I introed it, and I want to end the show on this kind of topic here is on what's been happening in Minnesota, the fallout of it, and what it means in the week ahead. So today, Trump is announcing that he's sending Tom Homan into Minnesota amid protests. There are some on the right and left, both saying, "Hey, pull ICE out, pull DHS out, just let them be. Stop this. This is too much." All reports are that the gentleman who unfortunately lost his life did have a weapon. It was loaded. He did have extra ammunition on him, and possibly the video that looks like he was reaching for his weapon. From what I've seen, that's my opinion, speculation. There will be a report that comes out. There's a lot of obviously fraud, waste, and abuse, as we've seen from the Leering centers. Um, as is being spelled on the signs that were there in Minnesota from Nick Shirley, the YouTube reporter, investigative reporter who's gone in and exposed a lot of this fraud. He actually spoke before a Senate committee, a House committee, I think last week. I can't remember exactly which committee, but there was a representative from California asking questions about like, okay, how did you come up with this stuff in Minneapolis, and then what is your understanding of what's going on in California? And he's Nick Shirley, the investigative reporter, and even the representative there are saying, "Look, California is worse." And Trump's highlighted, "Look, this is worse, and we're going to go to California, and we're going to deal with this issue." So we're seeing this play out here with Tom Homan going to there. And the reason I want to bring this up is because this week you're seeing that the Minnesota is trying to be used by Democrats and Republicans who are on the verge of possibly losing elections of a way to the best way to say it is just in the words of Chuck Schumer of how Schumer calls on GOP to move the funding package without DHS money to avoid a shutdown. Basically, Schumer saying, look, if you have this DHS funding in this bill as it is right now, we are not going to fund it and on the Democratic side and or the Republican side. So whether that is true, if the Democrats hold to that, or if it's going to be something that they pull back on, is yet to be seen. They said a lot of things coming last funding go around, but now this one's different. You've had some representatives like Marjorie Taylor Greene step down and just vacate her seat, which is just a bold move. And even her coming out this week. I think it's here in one of the headlines on the Hill where she's talking about how, yeah, y'all are all being, she says here on the side, you're all being incited into a civil war. Not necessarily. It's just a few people, and the left is going crazy on this, saying things like, It's time to bear arms. It's time to take up arms. It's time to attack. And if you've seen any of the videos of anything coming out on Twitter, social media, is these ICE protesters are violent. They're going to hotels. They're attacking journalists who are protecting themselves with body armor and have cameras and vehicles, attacking people, throwing bricks at agents. Um, I mean, just harming people in any way possible, being violent. And there's a right to protest, and there's a right to speak your voice as far as the First Amendment. But at the same time, once that voice turns from just voicing your opinion and saying things to harming people and being violent and breaking the law there and attacking federal agents, that's where the actual law on hand is plays the books. And if you saw the story on the immigrant who had a child there with him, and then a 5-year-old child, and then when ICE came to arrest him, he left his child and ran for his life to protect himself, and there are some ICE agents who stood there and watched over the child to protect the child. They're getting backlash for this, which is just astonishing, um, and amazing that there would be any backlash and saying, "Oh, they want to separate families." Well, in reality, he could have chosen to stay there, understanding he broke the law, and be arrested rather than run and leaving and abandoning his child. And then the DHS has a policy of you can either be deported with your child or without your child. And unfortunately, he chose to run away. So this is the left. This is all encompassing of what is happening, and trying to use this and to position and to shut the government down, on the threat of possibly shutting the government down. So as we are at home with our families this week, hopefully staying warm for those in the South, is praying for our leaders to have an understanding of this issue, to learn about what's really going on. Don't listen to the lies in the media. And I've friends telling me that there are those um, in positions of authority believing the lies that are being put out from the news stories there in Minneapolis. We just pray that the veil be broken there. And look, if they're going to continue to believe these lies and believe that, look, there's midterms, there's elections coming up. We as the people, wherever these politicians may be and these leaders may be, we have the opportunity to use our voice in the coming season and vote these people out if we see that they're not aligning with freedom. And I think Speaker Johnson's tagline of faith, family, freedom is an advocacy point that I think most Americans can align behind, and hopefully they can understand that moving into these midterms, because you also have school board elections in a lot of places. So this is really heating up here in Minneapolis, and it's a major contention point in that. And I want to end on this very positive note, because you're seeing all this and you're wondering why. Well, is it really worth it? Should DHS and ICE be sent into these regions of the country where there are illegals, where there's fraud, abuse, waste, and abuse? And is there really a payoff? Is there a fruit from it? And this weekend, shockingly enough, Axios put out a report last week that talked about the if I can find my mouse here, that talked about how the murder rate in the United States fell 21%. And per Axios's own admission in their own report, let me show it here. They titled it. It says U.S. murder rate hits lowest levels since 1900. That's 126 years. If you can see the graphic here, where you see the sharp increase in the early 2000s, in the late 1990s, and then you start seeing this steady decline, and they're saying, oh, well, it was already on the decline, but you see that sharp, if you can see it here, that sharp decline in 1 year of 21%, back down to the lowest since the 1900s. And I didn't go investigate further than this. This is from the FBI data from before that to see, oh, well, was it even lower than ever before? Is it the lowest than ever? I don't know. The data doesn't really show that right now. It was hard. I didn't really find that, but the reality is look, this is quite interesting. And I want to play this Clay Travis clip because he had an interesting point about this, and showing that, look, the the Department of Homeland Security on this is, and more so the Trump agenda on this. And listen to what he has to say, because I think this is very interesting as to why some of the positions are being taken by this administration and the fruits of it.
Dropped to over 20% in 2025. And we, according to Axios, have potentially the lowest murder rate in the country since 1900. I want to repeat that because it should be a huge story that everybody is talking about. But I think because it's a positive news story and because there are reasons that I'm going to get into that require some credit for Trump, a lot of media is not going to talk about this, and you may not hear about it anywhere else. So I want to make sure that I just leave that graphic up on the board, if you would, there. That is an Axios graphic, the homicide rate in America since 1900, going all the way back to when no one that is alive today was actually alive.
And so the point there is that we're seeing the effects of when you actually apply the laws that are already on the books and how beneficial it is for the American people. You also see in this report from Axios, this is Axios, they're a very left-leaning organization, but they actually did some good reporting and looking and investigating into this. They talked about how 9 of the offenses tracked declined by 10% or more. There are 13 that were tracked. 11 of the 13 crimes were lower in 2025 than in 2024. The aggravated assaults fell by 9%, and gun and robbery numbers tumbled by 22 and 23% respectively. Drug crimes are up 7%. The lone category of increase they talked about. But then ultimately, the murder rate in 2025, they say, is I'll pull this up here so you can see what I'm looking at here, is the highest, or is the sharpest, the term that they use, the sharpest 1-year decline or drop on record. This is from Axios. So this is the effects of the Trump administration actually upholding the law. And I know, a lot of people get upset. Oh, people are getting harmed, et cetera. Families are being separated. One, that's not necessarily true. That goes back to Obama policy. But then you have this. I want to show this. So this is Axios reporting the news, doing a very good job, a left-leaning organization. And then you have the New York Times, and Eric Trump put this out. The New York Times put out, what's behind the staggering drop in murder rate? No one knows for sure. Seriously? Like, the mindset there, the double-mindedness on that is, look, an organization's putting it out there. Hey, this is what's happening. These are the effects of this. And, well, we don't really know. And even Axios in the report, if you actually read it, they say, well, you can't really attribute this to Trump. This is already declining, so yada, yada, yada. The interesting thing there is look, you can go look at the effects of upholding the law, shutting down the border, dealing with the drug issues, dealing with the criminals, getting them off the streets, not allowing catch and release in most blue cities, so ending that, and actually upholding people to the laws that are actually on the books, not having to go in and pass more laws to be more totalitarian. And it's just quite interesting to see this play out. But the benefit of that is even though there is this hysteria from the left on this, is that crime is coming down. DC is no longer a walking and a national disgrace where you're walking around and having to feel the threat of an attack or a burglary or et cetera. Things there. The people in DC are happy. The people around America are happy. On the border, they're happy because the border is being shut down. Now you obviously have to deal with the people who are here, which they're trying to do, as you're seeing in Minneapolis. But the left is trying to use this to cause a government shutdown. And they're threatening, hey, in negotiations, look, we have this budget deal. You're doing this. We want to cut this funding. Let's talk. That's a bad way to negotiate, in my opinion. And we'll see how this actually plays out. Can the thing is here is with the slim majority that Speaker Johnson has in the House, can he hold these margins? Can he hold this vote? Can he push this through to prevent a government shutdown? Can they work with the cabinet here with the Trump administration and getting out the news of these stories so that these lies aren't pressed forward? And then what you're also seeing from this weekend is you're seeing many on the left go out and protest with their children and using their children as a shield. We have to ask ourselves is where have we seen similar tactics being used of children being used as shields? Where have we seen where lies and things are just pushed out there and the majority of Americans who aren't keeping up with this getting somewhat pulled in a direction of believing first news is true news? In reality, that's not necessarily the case. And we've advised, look, take your time, wait on these stories to play out, especially when you're talking with family and friends, because the truth always usually takes time. There needs to be an investigation. There needs to be um, a review of what actually happened. And when you see that, even on the early instances of what's actually happened, is the truth isn't always what was first put out by the left and many on social media. So I want to close with that, just beginning to bring some hope into this. And yes, it's an intense time right now, and obviously with the icy storm weather, the Trump administration is on icy negotiations on a lot of these issues. They can teeter back and forth, and some of the things Trump does are very beneficial. Some of the things he does can be very harmful. But at the end of the day, is you have an administration willing to stand up for freedom, willing to deal with this, willing to uphold the laws that are actually on the, and you're seeing the fruits of it here already in year one. Now, as we head towards year two of the second term of Trump go around in the administration, we're heading into the midterm, so things are going to get more intense, more increased. We've warned of that. And we're going to continue to dive in here on the issues that are going to affect the midterms, that are going to, the races that will affect everyday American people, and start looking and diving into that. So, blessings each and every one of you for following along today as we hamper down and stay warm during this icy storm. Hopefully, you guys are able to stay warm and stay hydrated and well fed and spend some time with family and friends. Sorry, I apologize for oh, the runny nose here. But it's affecting us in more ways than one. But so I want to end on that positive note there. This administration is doing things that are being very beneficial, bringing life to many across this nation and protection for many across this nation. And so we're going to close out with that. And thank you all for joining in with us. Pastor Tim will be back next week as he's made his way back or starting to make his way back from Germany. And he'll actually be stuck in Florida because of the icing conditions here. Won't be able to make it back until later this week as he tried to get back tomorrow. But he'd been pushed back because you can't take off or land in the South. And so he's going to be hampering down in South Florida in my old stomping grounds there for a little bit. So blessings to each and every one of you for following along. We'll be back next week, and we'll most likely have something Wednesday night, but we'll put something out there as far as that. We plan on doing something tomorrow for our noon prayer as well, but due to weather conditions, we'll see what actually happens. So thank you for following along, and we'll be back next week. Have a good one.